Hello, everybody. I'm Miss Lisa, and welcome back to another episode of Woke Art for Teens and Adults. Today, we're looking at Asian American voices, and I'm going to be talking about the book The Patron Saints of Nothing by Randy Ribay. This book was very thought-provoking and very interesting. I have never read a book that was at least partially set in the Philippines before, and I chose this book because I don't really know that much about the Philippines or the Filipino culture, and I thought it would be a great opportunity to learn something more. And I'm really glad that I read this book. Now, he goes to the Philippines. This is a book about a boy that's in his last year of high school, and he's a little bit lost. He's not sure what he wants to do, and he finds out rather suddenly that his cousin back in the Philippines has been killed. And he, of course, wants to know more about this, what happened, but nobody will tell him. And this cousin is more than a cousin to him. This cousin was his very best friend for a long time while he was growing up. They wrote letters back and forth, but eventually he ended up getting very involved with his life in the States, and they sort of fell out of contact. Now he wants to go to the Philippines and find out what happened to his cousin June. And the story involves him actually devising a plan, going to the Philippines, and starting to investigate. He has to figure this out by himself at first, and then he finds some people that can help him. But he strives and strives and strives, and he thinks he's almost there, but he just can't find the answer until near the end of the book. And he says that feeling that he had was like when you're almost done with a jigsaw puzzle, but you discover you're missing a couple of pieces. You overturn the box, search under the furniture, and look everywhere else you can think of, but they don't turn up. Of course, you can still see 99% of the image, but the inability to click those last pieces into place irks the soul. And so this idea of jigsaw puzzle and his search and his investigations, everything like that, it made me think of a very large puzzle. But I wanted to do something a little bit different. I didn't want it to be a plain old jigsaw puzzle. I didn't want it to be a crossword puzzle. What was I going to do? I sort of invented a puzzle in a puzzle. So this is the project here for the book. And I'm not going to lead you through making this. Excuse me, let me just move this out of the way. I'm not going to lead you through making this puzzle because I would like you to try one on your own. I would like you to make your own puzzle about something that means a lot to you, or maybe about some person that means a lot to you, something that you're very invested in. Try to make your own puzzle, and let me explain to you how I made this one. So this puzzle doesn't look like your typical jigsaw puzzle. You might be able to tell that there's something else going on in here, that you're just not sure what it is, but you're just not sure what it is. And I am going to show you as well that this is a case of the couple of pieces missing. Now this irked me so much that I actually had to put them back into this piece of art. So they're there, but they're not actually included in the puzzle. At least we can see them and we know they're not lost for good. So I had to think of a different way to make a puzzle because I wanted this to be original. And what I ended up doing was starting out with words because it was probably going to have to be a word puzzle. If I used an image, it would be more like a puzzle of a mountain or a garden, things that we have seen before in different ways, but more of a standard scenic just jigsaw puzzle. If I made it an image of the boy or his cousin or anybody else in the book, that would be, again, not an original way to think of puzzles because it would be more of a portrait puzzle, right? So I thought it was going to have to do with many words because I decided to choose words that were, and ideas that came up through the book. And so the first thing I did was I wrote out a lot of words, and then I started looking for patterns. I started to think about how they might fit together, and I didn't use some of them, and I found some more. Some of these words in here are actually Filipino words. Some of them are foods, tocino, maybe that's tocino, I don't know how to pronounce it properly. Some of them were themes that came up in the book. For example, inequality, identity. So I started looking for ways to put the words together to make a puzzle. And then I arranged them as best I could into this grid here. And I X'd out very gently the boxes that weren't used. So this is actually a grid that I drew. And then I put the letters in that corresponded to certain words. And then I sort of deleted I deleted the extra boxes by putting little diagonal green lines through them. That left us with letters and places where there were no letters. And then after that, I added a few indications of how to read these words. And this is the part that makes the puzzle, I think, original. I do not know of any other puzzle like this. There may be some, but this is the first time I've seen this. So to read this puzzle, we have to look for the arrows, and the arrows will give us an idea of the direction we want to read. So if we look at this line here, we see A with an arrow facing downwards. If we read this word downwards, we see addiction. That was definitely one of the themes in the book. Okay, we talked about the word inequality, and you can see that there's more letters underneath it, so we'll just have to ignore those. We just look for the words. There's a word here, balikbayan. Balikbayan. Now these are boxes that the Filipino families would put together for taking back home boxes of gifts. So they would be bringing boxes of gifts to all of their family members back home. And that's what these sorts of boxes are called, balikbayan. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And we can see the arrow pointing to the right, so we know that's the word. And here's another. I'm not even going to tell you what this is. You'll have to read the book. It's a very important line right here. What else do we have? Tagalog. This is one of the official languages in the Philippines. Tagalog, and actually the official languages are English and Filipino, and Tagalog, Filipino is a variant of Tagalog. What else do we have here? We have, something missing, and sturry. So if we look down here, we can find the piece that goes in there. It's mystery. And we also see that these two letters would be US, so we can read social justice. Here's Duterte, the president of the Philippines. Here's anger, poverty. What's over here? an arrow facing to the right, best friend. June was his best friend and also his cousin. Corruption, reality, identity, missing, murders, heal. This is a Filipino word. I think it must mean thank you, palimos, but I should have put an arrow facing downwards as well because there's puzzle here. So you get the idea. You can read this and find out some of the themes and words that went along with the book. Here's suburban. Help. Barangaya. I think this means neighborhood. Barangaya. So this is how I set up my puzzle. And you might have a different way to set up your puzzle. Well, let me just talk a minute about puzzles because puzzles are very, very good for you to think about and to solve. They make things not immediately obvious, but it makes you think very hard about what you're trying to find, and that is good for you and good for the people that are going to be enjoying your puzzles. Now, artists like puzzles, and perhaps it's just me. I don't think it is, but artists really do love puzzles. And let me just show you this painting that I did for the Asian American Voices for Kids. This was a painting of a papaya tree because the papayas were very important to the Vietnamese girl Ha, who is the main character in this book. And the reason I wanted to show you this is because when I look at this now, and when I look at pretty much any painting, what I see are patterns of color. So if I made this into a puzzle, it would be exceedingly easy for me to do because I would be cutting out, I see a blue triangle here that I would definitely cut out. I see a blue triangle here. I see a blue triangle here. I see this interesting shape here. I see kind of an oval shape here and a slightly pointed oval here. And then, so what we're looking at here, these, of course, are sky. These represent sky. But if we cut this piece out, it's still a shape. And we call these negative shapes because they aren't your subject matter. They're in between. It's like saying the shape of the air is a blue triangle. It's like saying the shape of the air is a triangle and the color is blue. So if we look at this up here, it's a very jaggedy piece, but its general shape is a triangle and its general color is blue. And if we simplify a lot of complicated things, because when I was making this video yesterday, I was saying the leaf shape of papaya trees are actually very complicated. They're not a simple shape because they have 7 bits, we can call them lobes of the leaf that stick off from the center. And each one of these is like a wavy edge. So to draw this, I would be making a wavy line that goes around and around and around. And they're actually slightly more complicated than this even. The simplified version is using a wavy line that goes around in this fashion. So when I think about the leaf, when I'm drawing the leaf, I'm thinking about a leaf that is going to have a major part at one end. This is actually the largest part of the leaf. And then it's going to have two sort of lobules that face upwards. We'll call this up because this is, if you turn it this way, the leaf would be up. So this is the top of the leaf. It's the largest part. And then these two parts are facing up, but to either side. So upwards to the left and upwards to the right. Then there are two bits that are sort of across from each other that are pretty horizontal. So we can call those two horizontal. And then we have two that are smaller that kind of face down. And so this is how I break things down into my, for drawing. I take something complicated and I talk through it to make it simple. Not, of course, out loud, but in my head, I'm thinking there's a larger part of the leaf, and then there are two smaller parts that are still facing relatively the same direction as the large one, but slightly to the left and slightly to the right. And then there are two more that are pretty much across from each other that are kind of horizontal. And then there are two more that are kind of facing slightly downwards in either direction. And so I get this shape. I can put it together to get the shape of the leaf. So all of these, and I should say also that the negative spaces between everything helps you get the positive shapes. So if you're trying to draw these papayas and the trunk of the tree and the leaves sticking out in just this way, you're also thinking about the shapes in between. What is this shape of blue? What is this shape and this shape? And what happens when you put them together? You get sort of a blue mountain shape. Okay? So those negative shapes are super important. They help us draw. And this puzzle, when we put the puzzle on black paper, those negative shapes really stand out. And they make us feel that, oh my goodness, our puzzle is incomplete, which is exactly how he felt when he couldn't solve the mystery of how his cousin died. And it is resolved at the end of the book. I'm not going to tell you what happens, but what happens in the puzzle is that we can put the pieces off to the side and know that they're still there, but it's not obvious until you figure out how to read the puzzle what these might mean. Now, there are different ways to make a puzzle. This was a way that I thought would be interesting, and I loved doing puzzles when I was a kid. I still love doing them. I just don't have time anymore. But I think designing puzzles is a super great thing to do, and solving them is even better. So go ahead and think about how you might make a puzzle about some aspect of your life that you want to make so important that you want to remember it in puzzle format, or in, it's like journaling, but very concisely, because you're only using single words. So these are what I would say are some very, very important words and concepts from the book, from the whole book. And to put it together like this also, because you're thinking about each word separately and then designing a puzzle around those words, it helps each word sort of stick in your mind. And when you think about why is that word important, because you're thinking about it in this complex way, there's different, those things really sort of cement themselves in your head when you go to make the puzzle. You'll remember, for example, suburban. That doesn't sound like a very important word, but this is what this was the boy's past. Before he went to the Philippines, he lived in suburbia, and this was his sort of uninspiring way of living. He was just tired and sort of not very excited about going on to college. He didn't know what he wanted to do. He was just a senior with senioritis living in suburbia. But suddenly things got a lot more scary and involved, and he needed to find the truth, Truth. He needed to find the truth, and he needed to find himself. He needed to find his identity. And so all of these things together sort of give you a feel for the journey that he went on. It's a very good exercise in sort of making something stick in your head, for making it so important that you won't forget it. And I'm going to remember this book for a long, long time, not just because it was actually incredibly interesting and sad and complex, but it was a book that I'm not going to forget because I made this puzzle. These things are going to stick with me for a long, long time. So, when you study for an exam and you read things 20 times and they're just not sticking in your head, try making a puzzle. Try putting it in puzzle format and see what happens. All right, that's all from me for today. I hope you found this very interesting. I certainly did, and I would recommend this book to you. I learned so many things about the Philippines I just had no idea about. If you want to find out some of the things I learned, take a look at the supplementary information that I have added at the bottom of this video in the print form. The supplementary information contains some of those things that I found about the Philippines that I just had no idea about. Very interesting country. Take care, and I hope that I see you again next time. Next time we are going to be talking about diverse abilities voices on May 13th, 2021. See you then. Goodbye.